Thanks everyone for joining us for another episode of Timber Ninja Radio. We are hitting, I don't know, what would this be, Tyler? Like
I don't even
episode 6
anymore.
I don't know. Yeah, let's just
7, 8.
I don't know, somewhere 5, 6, 7, 8. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But
we're gonna say as the spirit leads, Jason. That's what number we're on. As the spirit leads.
Yeah. Well, and today it's September the 14th. So a lot of hunting seasons have kicked in. And we had like one of our first cool days yesterday. It was 52 degrees here in the mountains at my elevation, which had been cooler up in the higher elevation. So it's starting to feel like fall. And I had a buddy send me a picture yesterday hunting up here of a scrape that was just ripped open. So I don't know if that cold weather really got him a little feisty or what. But anyway, enough about that. We have a special guest on today, our buddy Bill Thompson from Spartan Forge. How you doing, Bill?
Good. How you guys doing?
We're doing good. Trying to hold it together.
Yeah, I'm holding it together myself here. I've got in the room, I apologize to you guys as listeners, but I've got my 14-week-old German short hair that can't be left alone yet. And I don't know how many weeks old she is, but she's 5 years old, my daughter, who's homesick from school. So I apologize in advance to everyone who has to put up with my shenanigans.
Yeah. Well, we're not very professional and like dialed in on our podcast. And there's probably only like 4 or 5 people that actually listen.
Man, we set a low bar, Bill, so don't worry.
Yeah.
All right, good. Me too. I set a low. The good thing about setting a low bar is you can't be disappointed.
Dude.
Exactly. You can always work up, but it's a lot worse when you get kicked in the peels and you go down.
In my current position, I've followed 2 people that they set the bar really low. So like I'll go in and I'll just do the job and everybody's like, man, this is so impressive. And I'm like, look, man, when you're laying on your back, you only got one way to go and that's up.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. That's how I look at my romantic life too. I always look for people that are looking for somebody like really low bar and they come to me and then hopefully I can impress them with jokes and other things.
That's awesome.
Well, we got Bill on today because Bill's got, obviously, if you don't know what Spartan Forge is, you're going to learn about it today, but he's got a great app that we use for hunting. And, we became closer friends with Bill and just really enjoy Bill. He's a good dude. And, we want to hear about his product and, all of our listeners, let them hear about what Spartan Forge is if they don't know and see how it goes. So, Bill, give a little background about yourself, from a hunting and even a professional side.
Yeah. So, I grew up hunting kind of culturally in North Dakota. Didn't really take it uber seriously until about, 15 years ago. I don't remember, I'm getting old now. So I'm starting to forget exactly how long I've been doing things. I think about it and I'm thinking it was probably 2008 or 2009 or something like that. I started kind of seriously, or bow hunting, I should say, with my brother-in-law, who kind of got me into it. And I had never really done anything close to that. Like in North Dakota, it was just kind of, you do your opener of gun season in the 21st. You might shoot a doe or like a decent buck, and that would be the whole season. Take it to the meat processor, get some beef jerky back, and then that's the hunting season. So it really wasn't something for me that I took seriously. And I just was kind of doing it as an opportunist. And then while I served in the military, I was home on I believe it was mid-tour leave or something like that from Afghanistan or Iraq or something. And Iraq, it would have been Iraq. So I was home and my brother-in-law was doing some hunting and he was like, yeah, dude, you need to do this. It's so much fun. It's, bow hunting essentially. And I kind of got set up for failure because the place where I first started to bow hunt was my mother's property in North Dakota. And, at that time he was just like, yeah, just throw out some corn and then sit over the corn and wait to see what comes in and kind of go from there. I was like, okay. So I just did exactly what he said. Maybe it wasn't corn. I think it was actually screenings from like from an elevator. I don't know if you guys have elevators where you're at, but grain elevators essentially. They threw me some screenings, which are basically the rejected grain. And so I threw a bunch of that on the ground, came back like 2 weeks, or not 2 weeks, probably 2 days, 3 days later, and climbed up into the tree stand. It was just like an old lock on. and had the bow, and a bachelor group of bucks showed up. Like a ton of bucks showed up. I think I had like 7 bucks show up the first night, and I had no clue they were just all gathered around this bait, and I was like, this hunting stuff is easy. This is easy. Like, I got nothing. Why are always people talking about how difficult this is? I took my first shot at a deer and threw it right over his back and missed it, and then didn't see a deer at that spot again for like the rest of the time I was there. Maybe some does or something. And but I remember thinking about how easy it was. Reggie, Daddy's on the phone. I remember thinking how easy it was, and then I came back from deployment, and then I went to Maryland, and I'd done a couple successful bow hunts in North Dakota early on. After that, where I started doing more than just throwing bait out, like actually hunting, like trying to learn how to read sign and doing that type of stuff. And then I went out to Maryland and just got my teeth kicked in the mountains of Western Maryland. Being military, there was just no places to hunt. And well, I should say they weren't really opening for base access, or I didn't know how to get base access. So I started going out to Western Maryland and doing like mountain hunting, and just got my teeth kicked in for like the first 2 years. Like, saw a few doe, and that was like it. Saw no bucks, no nothing. And I started, reading voraciously about hunting, and kind of came to the conclusion that everything I read was bullshit, and it wasn't going to help me at all, because I'd read something in a magazine like North American Whitetail or something like that, and it would have you focusing on certain things that might work in certain scenarios, but they certainly weren't working in like the mountain scenario. And one of them might be is just like focus on transition and find transition, and then go hunt transition or something like that. And so I really learned a lot during those first 2 years, and just decided I was going to learn on my own, essentially. Like, there was no resource that I was going to be able to go to. I mean, I didn't really know a lot about like the bow hunting forums and stuff. I was overseas a lot. Like I said, this was like maybe 2010 or 20 or so, and it just wasn't prevalent, or if it was, I wasn't into it. So I started hunting on my own and learned a lot, and took my first mountain buck in like, I think 2011 or something like that, 2010 or 2011. It was a really good mountain buck. And that was when I got really addicted to bow hunting. Like, at that point, I was in hook, line, and sinker. And yeah, so I was doing that all while I was a military officer. While I was a military officer, I was an intelligence guy. I focused on like 3 specialties of intelligence collection, which were signals intelligence, which you can just think of as like collection, interpretation of radio frequency signals being sent through the air. And then the other one was human intelligence, which was, debriefing and recruiting sources. And then the third one was cyber, and cyber is kind of where a lot of my time went, which was on net operations, or my time, the focus was on offensive cyber operations, which essentially are like shutting down enemy networks. So in order to shut down an enemy network, you have to have a vast understanding of networks, first of all, before you can hope to shut a network down. So like those 3 things I focused on from an operational standpoint while I was in the military. And then that transitioned me from when I became an officer. I got selected for what we call in the military is a warrant officer, which is a simple way of explaining a warrant officer. Is like, there's 3 types of soldiers. There's like your enlisted and your lower enlisted soldiers, which are kind of like your doers. So if you think of the Army as like a school, those would be like your students and maybe some of your faculty, right? And their goal is to carry out the mission, which in a school is to learn, or in the military is to conduct war and deter war, and when deterrence fails, conduct war. And then you have the officers, which are like your superintendents and your school board and your administrators, and their job is to determine policy, to get money, funding, and that type of thing. And then you have these warrant officers, which you could think of them as like, these are the facilities we're going to have in the school, and these are the textbooks we're going to learn from. So their job is to kind of be the technicians of the military. From in my perspective in the military, it was to build the gear that we use to enable intelligence operations, and to use that intelligence that was gained to prosecute targets on behalf of the U.S. So the U.S. says, they might determine what they call a JPEL, which is the Joint Prioritization Effects List. And these are like, hey, these are the people we want to kill while we're in this country. It was my job to go out and collect intelligence to enable those kill capture operations, or kill operations mostly. That was really the focus of like my first 14 years of service. And then for my last few years of service, there's some overlap there as well too. And my last few years of service was focused on building the stuff that would actually go out and enable these intelligence operations. So that's collection equipment, that's furtive measures to enable operations, collection operations, stuff like that. I worked in organizations like DARPA and other places, which are kind of like the mad scientists of the DoD. Their job is to come up with crazy ideas and try to build something crazy. And generally what they're focused on is not actually the crazy thing, but all of the things that they had to build on the way to the crazy thing. So I did that for a couple of years. And then I did development where I was actually building the capabilities. And I went back to operations for a little bit, and then I retired. So my job for that military is really to build the equipment that would enable an intelligence collector or an assaulter, a guy who's actually going to go out and do the operation, to get that intelligence. And really to do that, that's a targeting problem. And a lot of the things that I noticed while I was in the military was, while I was trying to hunt when I was back home, that was also a targeting problem. It's like, how I've got an animal that doesn't want to be killed, and he or she uses their defense mechanisms, natural in this case, to outwit or to outbeat, or to beat the hunter and not be killed. So, as an intelligence guy, I looked at that same targeting cycle and I said, all right, what are the variables involved with this? What can I understand about the environment in order to bolster that targeting cycle and to get on that deer? And it was the same thing I was doing in the military. So I took both of those things and just more and more started taking notes and writing things down and saying, these things that I'm building in the military are things that I could use to help the hunter. And that's kind of where the idea of Spartan Forge was born out of, was engineering the pursuit for that at this time whitetail hunters, but then going forward for all species.
Sweet. That's a good bio. And just to clear the air, there are no longer any bucks like that in North Dakota, correct?
No, they're all gone.
They're all gone. Yeah.
Yeah, they're all gone.
And also, I bet it meant a lot. I mean, obviously we live in the mountains and pride ourselves in mountain hunting. And I bet it felt really good to go out there and put in all that hard work in Maryland and actually pull it off a natural, right way.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like, I don't care about, I actually get reached out to a lot from people who hunt there still now, either guys that I knew when I was just hunting there, then they'll hear me on a podcast, or guys that just hear me mention it. But I spend a lot of time in Green Ridge State Forest, and it's tens of thousands of acres. And it's up in Western Maryland. And, if you tag out on a big buck out there, you know exactly what you're doing and exactly how to do it. I've drug 3 out of there. One of them is on the wall behind me. And all 3 of those deer, like, you can kind of gauge it from the adrenaline dump that you get, right? Like, if you're just paying an outfitter and you go and shoot a deer, like, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm fine with that. And if that's the way you hunt, or if that's what you have time for because you're uber busy somewhere else, like, go ahead and do that. But when I do that, or I hunt a deer in some other capacity, I don't get near the adrenaline dump that I do when I've been focusing on a deer in like mountain country and running cameras and or focusing on a spot that I know produces deer. And then, like I said, isolating all of those variables and making a decision about when the time is right to go in and do that harvest. Those are some of the most rewarding hunts. And those are the hunts that kind of resonated with me. So yeah, I'd really say that I made my bones and developed myself as a hunter, and really focused my hunter tradecraft, or whatever you want to call it, in those mountains in Western Maryland. That's like really where I learned, and where I continue to go back to and hunt to this day, because I love the challenge so much.
Oh yeah. Yeah. All good things come with hard work. That's what I think, the suck
Absolutely.
fest you actually remember. So you did all this work in the military, hunting bad guys, creating technology to find and locate bad guys and go out and, take care of the target. And then Spartan Forge comes, which you launched, was it last year? Is that right?
Yeah, we've had the app in the App Store for about 9 months.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what I remember. So what drew you to wanting to start a app in the hunting industry, and what drew you to like really want to be in the hunting industry?
It's kind of like the old thing where someone you might be complaining to, like, your grandfather or someone in your life about something, and they'll be like, well, if you can do it better yourself. Like, stop bitching about someone else doing something shittily. Can I swear, by the way? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're good.
all right. Like, don't complain about someone else doing something half-assed when you're just a consumer and you're the one who's paying them to be half-assed. Like, go out and do it yourself. And I really saw it as an opportunity to kind of, one of the things that I really worried about while I was in the military is what the hell am I going to do to feel, when I was in the military, just like when we just talked about mountain bucks, I would feel a great amount of pride when we had executed an intelligence operation that led to a bad guy being put away, especially a bad guy who we knew had either killed Americans in the past or is planning on killing Americans in the future or is disrupting operations or whatever. I always felt really good, especially when I was the guy on the end, pointing the door out or briefing the commander and saying, this is why we need to put treasure on the line and blood in the way to get after these guys. I was so worried while I was in the military, like, what the hell am I going to do when I get out? Like, I don't know. I'm sure lots of people find lots of things to do when they get out of the military, but I always feel that I always felt I was going to miss that camaraderie piece and the sense of meaning that I derived from military service. And I had a lot of anxiety about that, especially as I was getting out. And Spartan Forge, first and foremost, has kind of replaced that because I have a new sense of camaraderie among the people that are on the pro staff, the guys that I deal with, the hunters that, I just got a couple of messages this morning from guys saying, I use the app in X, Y, or Z way, and I was able to get it done in this capacity. And so putting all that together, and then also realizing when I was doing my own planning for hunts, I was using like 7 or 8 different information repositories in order to get it together. So I'd be looking at like NOAA, and I'd be looking at weather flight patterns that get made for pilots. And I'd be looking at historical weather data from the U.S. from NOAA. And then I'd be looking at the USGS, and because I wanted LiDAR data, I would go here and look for that. And then because I wanted this historical weather data, I went here for that. And then also I wanted to know where the majority of the hunting was. So I was going to the DNR website, and I was looking at what the buck to doe ratio was in the state. And I was looking at how many hunters there were per square mile. I was looking at the focus and all of these things. And, and then I needed a mapping app, and then I needed this, and I needed this. And there's like 7 or 8 things that I would be using to put it all together. And I was like, this is super annoying. And all of this is just libraries of data that can be centralized. So my thought was that I would put together everything in one application that I use to develop my own targeting cycle as I pursue, whitetails or whatever in the future. And I wanted all of that information centrally in a repository and easily accessible. And I told myself this is something that I can do. It's within my technical scope. It's what I've been doing in the military. And it's also, for me, it's been a useful mechanism. We've raised money a few times, and we're going to do it again this year for veterans to kind of give back from where I came from. We did a veterans hunt last year. We raised, I think, about $6,000. We're going to raise a lot more this year. And then I can kind of give back from where I came. So for me, it kind of made total sense that all of these things I was feeling anxious about, all of these opportunities I thought from a market standpoint existed to do something better and not complain or not bitch about how I don't like how someone else does it. And then put that all together and package that up and then give that to the hunter so that they could benefit from, essentially 21 years of sustained war. And it could go beyond just, benefiting Lockheed Martin or Raytheon. It could go to benefiting, the hunter in the woods. So to me, it just felt right. And, it was crazy how, everything in my life seemed to lead to this point. Everything that I've done since I was young has seemed to I can trace a line on all of it to this and can see how every one of these things has helped me become and do what I am doing today. And I think that's, maybe some of the most meaningful things I'll ever do.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's one thing, when I heard about your app from a lot of people, because we run around in some of the same circles, and which that's another reason that, when I met you, I was like, oh, if these dudes like him, he's got to be kind of a good dude, because the guys, I only really associate with people that are like no bullshit, straight to the point type people. And that's what I build my circle with, and people I can trust. And when I knew you're part of that group, I was like, oh, he's a good dude. I mean, for me personally with that, with apps is I was doing the same thing that you were doing. And I know a lot of guys do, you know, you have all these different areas that you seek information, but I'm also like one of those dudes, if something's working for me, I don't change it. So I hadn't really looked into it until more people kept telling me, it's like, hey, you should check it out. Cause Jordan, my business partner, our business partner, Tyler and I's business partner, he bought it last year, and he's like, dude, everything that we use, he's already got on there. And I was like, oh, cool. And it really is. Like you got everything that you really need, and a lot of things that I don't use, but I know other people do, that are already built into this one piece. And I know you have plans for more of that, but beyond that, like your emphasis on giving back to veterans. I mean, you are a veteran, and there's a lot of people that have companies that are veterans or veteran owned companies. They talk the talk, but there's not a lot to really walk the walk, and you really are walking the walk. And that's, you know, none of us are veterans at Timber Ninja, but the only discounts we really give are to veterans, and we donate, you know, a portion of our money back to conservation, because we want these things that we all love and enjoy to stay here. And you're already doing that, and you're doing it at a higher degree with us with your veteran hunts. You know, I mean, those went off really well last year, I heard, and I know you got plans to do more of those. So it's good to see good people doing awesome things.
And another thing, yeah, Jason, you left off is we also assist a lot with veteran stuff within our state. Like we've helped with the turkey hunt with BHA's AFI, the Armed Forces Initiative. We're getting ready to go do a muzzleloader hunt with them. We're the de facto guys across the state, really, for who they want to work with on that. So it's a very big part of, you know, supporting that community is a very big thing for us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the only reason we get to go and do all this stuff. You know, yep. This is hunting in other countries is for the elite. Like when I went on a stag hunt in Scotland last year, you need to have a lot of money to go and do that. And I was just fortunate enough to do it because I'm friends with a guy who's friends with people who own a property. So I was able to go get through it that way and get on there for relatively like almost nothing. But you know, if you want to do the hunting and like be, you know, a wild and crazy free person in the rest of the world, you need to be rich to do it. And so for me, the military allows us to do that and everything else, because those are the people that sign on the line to make sure that we have these, you know, rights that are slowly eroding every day. But for now, we still have these rights, and it's paid for in blood. So, and then on top of that, the military for me was a really different experience. Like I know it's romantic, or it's people talk about, you know, this is the price I paid while I was in the military. I'm quite different because I did nothing but benefit from my service. Like from start to end, whether it's the degrees I got, the training, the access, the information, the people, the mission, the sense of meaningfulness that I talked about before. I joined from a trailer court in rural North Dakota as a 17-year-old that just barely eked it through high school and had no prospects for his future. If I hadn't joined the military right now, not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I know I'd be killing myself. You know, I'd be a farmhand somewhere, or I would be a waiter or something like that. Like there's nothing wrong with those things. It's just, I know I would be miserable doing it, but those would be my only options. And you know, I walked out of the military with a few degrees, speak a couple of languages, got to associate with some of the best people in the world, got to do some of the most, from my perspective, the most meaningful work of all time. But, you know, by taking people off the battlefield that were happy to fly a plane into a building in order to do us harm. And yeah, I have a overwhelming urge to give back to that community as much as possible, especially to the people that didn't benefit like I did. Like I came out a better person, more equipped for the world. And I know a lot of guys, and I have friends who came out with missing limbs, broken marriages, their kids don't talk to them. They can't get the support that they need from the community that they've served. And so the more of those people that I can help, I think the better off I will be in the long run, and everyone else will be in the long run for it. So And thank you guys for the work that you guys just mentioned as well. And I think I had said it to Jason before, but if I didn't, like, I'm happy to throw free apps for everyone involved in that and all of the people that come on those hunts. No problemo.
Awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Very generous.
Very generous. Can't hide money is what I say. So obviously you're not the only game in town with as an app. I mean, there's a few different, I don't know how many there are now, but I know like what we talk about, because Tyler uses a lot of imagery and stuff for his day job. I only use this kind of stuff for hunting, or maybe I'll drop a pin at, a local bar or something. That way I can find my way back. But what really differentiates yours from some of the other ones out there?
I would say first and foremost, well, there's two things, and I'm sorry to do it, but I feel like in order to appropriately answer your question, I have to answer it at two levels. The first level is like strategically, how are we different? And that is that we are an unabashed, pro-American patriotic company that is First and Second Amendment, well, all amendments absolutists. Well, except for maybe income tax, absolutists. And that will never change, no matter how small or large this company grows. That is who we are, and that's where we come from, and that's where we go. And we believe in American exceptionalism. This is the best country in the world, and we all benefit from it. And that won't change. And I know it sounds kind of like people might be listening, and be like, okay, that's everyone. It's like, no, that's not everyone.
No.
When you pull the string on these other companies in this space, they take money from people that hate us. They take money from people that abhor the First and Second Amendment. They take money from people that see themselves as members of the global community and not the American community, even though they benefited in America. And that's not us, and that's not who we are. So from a strategic standpoint and from a company culture standpoint, that's who we are. But then I think to answer your question, from the tactical standpoint or from the app standpoint, from that level of analysis, we're not a mapping app. Maps are kind of primarily focused. And one of the things I thought about when designing this from the beginning was that this app wouldn't open up to a map. But then I thought, in order to we had to fit in a frame for people, and that frame was mapping apps. So that when people were looking at our advertising or we were trying to get them to pay for the application, that was like the first point of contact that I thought would make people understand who we were and where we were coming from. So we did build it around a map, but really we're a planning company or a machine learning company, because when you look inside of the application, there's mapping, but then there's historical mapping, and we have the same BS layers and the same BS map box stuff that every other company offers. And so there's that, right? But then there's journaling, and there's stuff that we're doing with deer camera integration in the next year or two that is going to be really, I think, no one else will do anything like it. But with the journaling now, if you have a deer picture that you want to find out what the weather was, or you have an observation in the field or whatever that you want to remember, say you saw a 3.5-year-old buck that you want to harvest when he's 4.5 years old, you can do that journal entry. It goes back and it grabs the weather data and it presents it in a way that is easily understood. But then you go from that and you go to like our Intel tab, which goes through the sunrise and sunset times. It goes through moon overhead, moon underfoot. It presents some of that weather data. It goes hour by hour weather data, but then it gets into like peak breeding, secondary and first primary and secondary peak breeding days for every county in the U.S. It gives you all of that moon data, but then also in the Intel tab, it goes into historical winds, and you can look at like month by month historical winds. So if you're doing like a hunt in Nebraska, you can see, all right, in this part of Nebraska in November, 38% of the time it's a southwestern wind. So I know that when I'm doing my digital scouting. But then it goes into the temperature variances and what you can expect from a weather standpoint when you go there. Then it goes into like the browse data. So you can look through and see what the deer are naturally foraging on in those areas. So when you are in those mountain buck situations that we're talking about, you know how to look for what is being eaten in that area. And someone might say like, yeah, okay, I got it. But what's the point of contact? And the point of contact there would be, well, in North Dakota, deer don't eat ferns, and the ferns will just die and go away and the deer will never touch them. But in Pennsylvania, they become a primary food source around December into January. And that's something that is presented in that foraging data inside of the application. so that when you're doing an out-of-state hunt or you're going somewhere you've never been or you're planning, you can kind of ingest that information. And we're also bringing out some machine learning stuff that's going to make that even easier going forward. And then inside of that, besides that, we have the My Content tools and that type of stuff. But then there's also, every place in every state, there's the buck-to-doe ratios, the hunter populations, the percentage of public land, the buck-to-doe ratios, the success among hunters, the notable pieces of public land where trophy animals have been killed. There's the destination pieces of public land where it's the largest pieces of tracts in the state. There's the artificial intelligence that does deer movement prediction that's built off of about 2,000 years of collared deer data. So what that means is that we go out to academics, we will build them their own models using their collared GPS data. So they'll put a collared GPS on a deer, that deer will run around for 1 to 6 years with it on, and then they get their data that they get from it. I build them models, and then they give me that data. Then I can build my own neural network that predicts, basically it predicts across an axis of a movement and pattern. So will the deer be in their core areas? Will they be venturing outside of their core areas into transition, or could they be in their full range? And again, that's not telling people whether or not they should hunt. It's just telling people how they can expect a general deer to act on a specific day. And that artificial intelligence is built off of truth data, because that deer was wearing that collar for those years, and we've got them from all over the U.S. So it's not just Florida, it's not just North Carolina, it's not just South Carolina, it's not just Georgia, it's not just Texas, North Dakota, Minnesota. It's all of those places, all the way up into Pennsylvania, and even places where we have live data. So I can actually go online right now and look at where deer are wearing these live collared deer collars, these GPS collars, and actually look and say, all right, tomorrow my neural network says they're going to mostly stick to bedding for the majority of the day. And then I can actually watch that day go by, and I can actually look at the deer and look at their movement patterns and say, yeah, for hunting hours, most deer stuck to their core areas, to their bedding areas. And that's what the neural network predicts. On top of that, we are introducing LiDAR data. We have a update that's happening today. It's building right now. It should be out tomorrow. That's going to give you 3 levels of contour data. The app itself gives you 4 different layers of mapping. It also gives you 5-centimeter imagery, which is the only imagery available on the market. 5-centimeter imagery basically means that for 5 centimeters of ground, you have 1 pixel occupying that space. So if you have a really small, like with this imagery, when people look at it, we only have it for about 41% of the U.S., but you can read license plates. Well, if it didn't get rid of it, that there's a neural network that gets rid of that data. But if you could, you can peer inside of houses with this data. You can pick out your individual tree, but then you can also go back every 6 months for anywhere from 3 to 7 years and look at how that land has changed. But then we also have 3 other map sources. So if you're not getting the imagery in your area that you like, you can consult 3 other map sources and find the mapping imagery that you want. But then we also do things like build the application so that it's built for one-handed operation. So there's a compass where you can access your tools, you can drop points from, you can initiate a track, you can change your maps, all with either the swipe, tap, or long hold of that compass. You can also switch the side of the screen that compass is on. So if you're dragging a deer out or carrying a stand-in with you, you can take that app out of your pocket, you can add a waypoint, you can add a photo to it, and you can start or stop a track all with your thumb. And you don't have to, drop the stand or drop your pack, or if you're on stand and you don't want to make a lot of movement, you can take it out of your pocket with one hand. You can get all the movement and all the information that you need and put it back in. So it's built for usability too. We're trying to make sure that the hunters don't have to expend a lot of effort, and we minimize the amount of taps. So for instance, on a competitor app, if you want to add public and land and agriculture, and you want to add 10-foot contours, first off, you only get the contours that they offer. Second off, it will take you to build that map. It will take you between 10 or 12 clicks, depending on how good you are with the application. In our app, it's 4 clicks, and then you can switch to another map just by swiping the compass. So if you're have your custom map and you're like, well, now I just want to see topo, you can swipe right back to topo with 1 swipe and then back to your custom map, and it's all right there for you to look at. So if you're going back and forth through data, in order to load all of that up and then go right back to a topo map, you're looking at 25, 30 clicks and probably 4 or 5 minutes of your time. But in Spartan Forge, you build that custom map, and then you can swipe between the other preset maps that we have and get a good understanding of the data in less amount of time. A lot of people will message me and say, in the beginning, you couldn't tap the map to switch your maps. Now you can tap the map or you can swipe the compass. A lot of people in the beginning would be like, oh, I really don't like it. I wish I could just tap the map thing. And I'd always be like, okay, we'll build that. That's going to come. But then invariably, those people would come back to me and say, now that I'm switching maps that way, I hate that I have to do it. If I have to go consult another mapping app or Google Maps or whatever, or if it's Western data that we haven't populated yet, that other apps like maybe Onyx has, and they have to go consult that because we haven't built that in yet. Maybe they're doing an elk hunt. They're like, man, I just realized how cumbersome it is now to navigate these other apps versus yours where I'm doing it in 1 or 2 clicks. So we really, went to a first principles approach with this app to make it can be as simple as you want it to be, or it can be as complicated as you want it to be. You can do as little or as much with it as you want to. And that's really, from a tactical, technical standpoint, what the differences is. We have an update coming out probably next month or maybe a little bit after. I always say a month, and it always ends up being 6 or 8 weeks. I'm sure you can sympathize with that, but it's called Blue Force Tracker. Essentially, like if the 3 of us are hunting a plot together, or the 3 of us are hunting public land together, we'll auto share our locations when we have service. And whenever we don't have service, any points that we add will be auto shared between us, as long as it's in the geo grid that we define. So if the 3 of us, like with my buddies out in Maryland, we would hunt that Green Ridge State Forest. I think the last time I counted, we had something like 600 pins between the 3 of us in that one spot that we've all shared. That is a tremendous amount of data and sharing and texting of points and lat longs and stuff. That will all be done automatically now inside of the application, as well as the safety feature of auto sharing location. And then we are introducing a LiDAR layer. First will be this contour layer. Then we have a map, a topo map, not a topo map, I'm sorry, a LiDAR map that will allow you to overlay vast numbers of different objects of data and different overlays of data, like thunderstorm systems, like other contours, like relief shading and all of that stuff. And this map looks unlike any other map you've ever seen. I can show you guys after the call. This thing looks like, I've never seen the show, but my buddy showed me. Have you guys ever seen Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
Well, do you say, Tyler, you have or haven't?
I have, yes. Well,
in the beginning, there's like a map that they show of the area. And that's pretty much what this map looks like. It's like a 3D colorized. It's unlike any map you've ever seen before, but it makes it look like you've never seen a map when you see it.
Oh, so wow.
All of that type of stuff is coming very soon. So we have that, among other things. We have a wear feature that'll be coming out later. I thought we would have it out by the beginning of the season, but there are certain facets of it that are more difficult. We have stuff called Leeward Ridge, where it's just you'll highlight a piece of property. It'll show you all of the predominant leeward features on the property. Stuff like that no one else is doing. So I guess if I'm going to summarize that question, and I'll do this a lot where I say way too much, and then I'll try to summarize it at the end. It's the other companies are mapping programs. We are a planning program. So that's the main difference. Is there's mapping apps, and then there are planning apps, and we are the only hunting planning app that is doing things beyond just showing you new interesting layers on a map. Like their thing now is like, now with more layers, we're going to give you another layer, and here's another layer. And most of them are useless. Like, I don't know if you've ever used like the on Onyx, they have like a acorn map. Like that thing, I think is right about 17% of the time, or 13% of the time, or something like that.
Well, man, you go down to the different species of acorns, and like they only have a flush so many years anyway. Like there's so many different factors. Like, but anyway, on all that, because man, you did unpack a lot there. I was so many questions, but I was curious about the data you got. So where we're at in Western North Carolina, you actually have a few different things that talk about the primary and secondary rut timing. And we're not in an area that has many deer per square mile. In fact, I want to say it's, what was it, Jason? 0.74 is the new number?
I don't know about the new number. The harvest rate used to be 0.4 per square mile in the national forest. 0.4 bucks harvested per square mile.
So, so when with the dates that you put out for us are actually the closest to what I've seen on the ground. And that's interesting because I showed it to a buddy of mine that works in our state agency that does that. And he was very impressed with that as well. Which
we
is
had four
something that
different sources. We had four different sources of data on the county by county, and then we lined that up with data that we collected from. We have North Carolina and South Carolina deer movement data.
wow.
So what we were able actually to do is to produce curves that showed us, we had an X and Y axis that went date and amount of yards covered per day. So we could actually look at and see when the most types of movement were happening in a 24-hour period, and then do that over that hysteresis, as well as having those primary rut dates. And then we were able to take the mean of that and say, this is when the most movement's happening in this area.
Wow.
That's it. I know that was one thing I saw on it. And we talked about that with Bo Martonic on a podcast that's getting released this week. I'm a big proponent for hunting the second rut here. And when I pulled that data for this area, I can't remember. I think it said December the 26th. In my window of time for killing mature bucks, which I feel you have a better opportunity of killing mature bucks in the second rut. I've always found December 13th through the 31st is like peak for our season, because our season ends on the 1st or 31st, and that being there on the like 25th or 26th or whatever it was is last year. All my buck activity, I wasn't able to hunt that part of the year, but just in my cameras, it was all 18th till after the first of the year last year. So it really is spot on, because when they call that second rut or any rut, it's not that exact day. It's going to be somewhere around that date based on what the weather's doing, really is how it.
Yeah, and we have a tip in there that I need to add that's basically similar to our movement and pattern tip, which is basically going to say, look, this date is a bell curve. And that bell curve starts generally 2 weeks before that date is when you're going to see the seeking and chasing behavior, and 1 week after that date. And you're absolutely right about the second rut. I've pored over, one of my favorite things to do is to pore over GPS data. I will sit with my coffee in the morning, and I'll get there at 5 a.m. and sometimes I'm still doing it at 11 a.m., especially when I get new buck data. I'll be sitting there and just looking at how bucks traverse areas and how they use it and times of year and all of that stuff. And with a lot of mature bucks, I'll see a lot of the most movement per day during that secondary rut period. Absolutely. So you're absolutely right about that. So I'm just backing you up from an empirical standpoint that a lot of mature bucks will move as much, if not more, during the second rut than they will during the first rut. And I'm guessing that it has to do with the amount of pressure that they're sensing in the woods, because everybody knows about the first rut and everybody's out there in the first rut and it's all crazy. But then they're also having to compete with the younger bucks that might be outrunning them or have more fat stores. So I think a lot of those like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old bucks are like, look, I'm going to have more mating success, less competition, and less human pressure during that second rut. They don't call it that. It's not like they're conscious individuals and they're marking their calendar. But like a dog that has sensed every time they piss on the carpet, they get a slap on the ass and put outside, they'll stop pissing on the carpet. It's the same thing with a buck. Like, I haven't taken an arrow near my boiler room during this second period of time, and I'm sensing less humans in the woods, and the competition is better. So yeah, you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah, well, I think also my theory has always been, just based on experiences, older bucks, they have more experience with rutting, so they know how to be efficient with their time because they know it's a long season, right? And so for me, like in the Midwest, I always plan that first cold front somewhere around October 31st. And then you'll see, that's when I see most mature bucks. And then, they say in the Midwest, like the peak of the rut is like around November 6th, 7th, something like that. But then you'll see another influx of older mature bucks on their feet around Thanksgiving. And you can look back, like I hunt Ohio a lot. You can look back at like the Ohio buck registry, and it shows all their big deer that have been killed. If you look at the big deer, let's say the booners and above, that's your older age class deer typically. There's a lot of them killed around the 31st of October, and there's a lot killed around Thanksgiving. You don't see many of those really getting killed during that quote unquote peak time. And then I also feel that they understand that younger does come in later, and that's what kicks off the second rut. It's not going to be as intense because you don't have as many does coming in. And also, I mean, I'm not a deer biologist, but I don't know that these younger bucks have realized that yet until they really start smelling it. So you see the older bucks, moving a lot more that time.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And the last thing I'll mention, just so we can put a bow on this, because I think it's also worth mentioning, those does that are coming into their second estrus or their first estrus may not have been at the proper weight to cycle the first time, which is why they're cycling during the second part of the rut. Those are also going to be your youngest and your most, what do you call it? The recruitment rate on the fawns that drop from that second rut are going to be born to a younger mother that's probably more viable and able to carry those fawns with her. So you'll see, I've read studies where the recruitment rate goes up for does that drop from a second breeding cycle, but then they're with younger does. And I'm not saying bucks know that, but it could be that bucks that do that have sired more offspring, and therefore, like breeding dogs, like, you know, we breed dogs because they have certain characteristics. Well, evolution is breeding these bucks to be more successful during the second rut because it's led to more fawn recruitment that has led to more bucks being born, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So we're getting really esoteric here, and that's of course a theory, but it is a theory that I did a podcast a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, with Auburn University, which has been one of our major colleges that we work with, and I build a lot of models for, and we do a lot of collar GPS data research with. And he tends to agree as well. We talked about this on why the second rut seems to be successful, just as the early pre-rut or the pre-rut, that October 31st time we were talking about, for those bucks, because they're onto something that the rest of the herd is not onto. And they generally do things that the rest of the herd don't do.
Dang, that's interesting. Glad to hear the scientific data match up with my redneck boots on the ground woodsmanship.
Well, yeah, I mean, the redneck boots on the ground woodsmanship is the observational data. Like that's the, I every time I talk to hunters like you and Tyler that are meticulous in their approach and how they spend their time in the woods, they'll say things like that where I'm always like, yeah, I see that in the data as well. And it's just because if you spend enough time out there observing and watching, and you're diligent in the way that you either catalog or remember data, and you mold your approach based on your observations, instead of just going in the stand and doing the same thing over and over again, if you're tailoring your approach to what you are learning and seeing in the woods and being cognizant of that, you're going to be more successful. Yep. And I find that with successful hunters, they are on to some of these things that I don't see until I've been in the data, for many years, like I have been.
No, and I like that too, because the other thing about the second rut, and I know, I'm sorry, I'm beating a dead horse here, but there's a saying with a lot of the biologists that I've come in contact with and worked with, it's winter threatens or winter stresses, but spring kills, and they're talking about that early spring. So when you've got a secondary rut, and they're, the gestation period for that, they're actually being born in a less stressful time environmentally with more readily available food sources and things like that. And in our area, less predation, like really heavy predation. So,
and more cover.
Absolutely. A lot more brooding and bedding, brooding's for the birds, but a lot more bedding and cover, all sorts of stuff. So yeah, that's a really cool thing that, that's what, when I saw that helped me with all that stuff. Cause you talked on being a planning app. And so like for my real gig, I do a lot of planning, multiple landscapes, different landowners, different things. And the fact that the imagery you have, you talked about that 5 centimeter resolution and everything, or I could be butchering it. And if I am, I apologize.
No, you got it.
But when you're planning on the landscape for conservation stuff or just in general, that resolution is so important and showing that change over time. Because one thing I think hunters miss the boat on is on habitat. It's how important disturbances are in habitats. And what that means, especially when you're scouting an area and getting ready to go look at it. I went through some of your imagery looking at a burn in the county I work in, and just seeing the vegetation that's come up from post-burn, that winter to that fall to the winter, and then that next spring, the abundance of vegetation. I'm not going to break into the invasive versus native, all that junk, and just what that's done over the past 5 years, it's been unreal to see. And what that's led me to do for scouting. And I'm looking forward to out-of-state hunts, going out west after elk, utilizing that, because you can tell that you guys actually source imagery in ways that other applications I've used, and I've used them all, they don't do it the way you guys do. And that's a huge difference. And I know, again, you're not mapping, But in order to plan effectively, that mapping and that
Need map.
imagery really, really, really matters. And you guys knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to get a lot better. Like I told you before, I've just finished negotiating some new contracts with some new companies because, as you just said, the majority of these companies get all of their imagery from the same place. I've gone to the source on a couple of these, and our imagery is only going to get better going forward. And we will go from having the 3 maps to just one killer map, probably in the next year or so. And then that killer map will have some of those overlays, and you'll be able to go back in time like you can right now. But really, it's that paradigm shift and getting people to understand that there's mapping apps, but then there's planning apps, and that planning app is the space that I seek to sit in.
Nice. Well, I mean, from all that, obviously we covered a lot in regards to what's going on now, what's coming down the pipe. It just speaks to me that you're about innovation, which is we're about innovation with our products. We don't want to make one stick and be done and, ride off into the sunset. Like we're always looking at moving the needle higher and higher, and like innovation's key. And that's why, we're fortunate to be buddies and working with you because, you're an innovative partner. And speaking of that, so just to summarize real quick for people that either don't have the app or about to get the app, what are just like a couple little features that are the newest that are coming on here soon that aren't already there?
Okay, so we have this contour piece that I talked about before is going to be in this next update, along with a free app for people. I want everyone to be able to hunt. And if there are features I won't be able to put in there just because of the price of admission. But, if you are seeking to have a map and to drop pins and to get weather and to get property lines, you're going to get that free from us. It's bullshit that people should have to pay $130 a year to pay for property data that their tax dollars have already paid for. So that data will be in there. And then we're also going to introduce a monthly app cost. So here comes call sign chaos over here, as I call her. We'll have a monthly app as well. That's going to run, I believe, $7.99 a month. So if somebody can only afford, if they know they're only going to hunt for like a month or for a couple months during the season, and they only need the features for a little bit of time, we can do that. And then we're going to have the still the same $39.99 price for the year. And it's going to so when we come out with our where feature, and the where feature essentially is using that same GPS data, you'll be able to just highlight a spot and it'll just tell you that spots that the artificial intelligence thinks that you should scout. So it's not an end all be all. It's just trying to help people out and be efficient with the time and planning. When we introduce that feature, we'll probably have to raise the price about $10 because of the computational architecture and the price that comes with renting those servers and the computational capacity from Amazon requires more money. So it may go up $10 then. But that where feature should be towards the end of the year. But then secondly, and I kind of mentioned it before, is the Blue Force Tracker. Blue Force Tracker should be ready in a month. Again, I think probably maybe 6 weeks. But essentially, again, that's just another planning tool and another way to lessen the friction on sharing points with your buddies. So, if you and I are hunting a spot together, say we're on a back 40, we can see where each other is live in the stand. As long as what you'll do is you'll draw a polygon around the property, and then you'll push the Blue Force Tracker button. You'll add your buddy's emails, and then anytime somebody passes that geofence, you'll be automatically sharing GPS location if you elect to, and sharing GPS waypoints that you drop on the map for planning purposes. So if you and your uncle are hunting somewhere together or something, you'll be able to see where each other is real time, or if someone falls out of a tree, you know where they were last. But then there's a couple other ways to use this. Say your buddy wants you to come on and whack some does, and you want to send them to a specific stand, but you're at work or whatever, you can drop the point and you can have him record a track, and you can see exactly where he goes to sit in the woods. You can go in there and, not hunt your best set, or he's not going where he shouldn't be, or he's not getting lost. Or if you're sending your son out to hunt or something like that and you're not able to be with him, you can see their location real time. But then lastly, if you're seeking access, or if you're seeking to go hunt on someone's land, or you're door knocking, like we have one tool called Property Annotation Tool right now, where you can mark the property. So say I come and ask Jason to hunt on his property, and he's like, not only no, but F no. I mark it red. If Jason sells his property, it will highlight purple and tell me, hey, there's a new property owner there. Go back and knock on the door again. But then also, if you're seeking property access to hunt there with Blue Force Tracker, you can tell the property owner as a last resort. I wouldn't encourage you to do this right away, but as a last resort, you can be like, hey, download the Spartan Forge app, the free version, draw a polygon around your land and add my email, and you'll see when I'm in the back of your property. So that if I'm back there hunting, you don't send your kids back there to play in their fort, or you're deconflicting the battle space, as it were, to make sure that landowners are staying happy and there's less friction between them. Or if you're just telling a guy, hey, I'm just trying to access some public land, and I just want to walk through the east part of your property to get to this public land because I want to access it in a way that the deer aren't used to, then he can just see how you're walking through his property and make sure that you're obeying the constraints that he's imposed on you to use that access. But then we're also building access for hunters to get into public spaces that they may not have been able to get into, or to hunt properties that where the landowner may not have given that access in the past because they're not sure what's going on in their backyard and they don't want their family in danger or their property being misused.
That's awesome. And you also have the desktops about to launch too, correct?
Yes, the desktop version has all of the same stuff that the other guys have: 3D maps, 3D map emphasization, or where you can emphasize the distance between the contours to see mountains better, maybe flatter land. It has the property lines, it has the agricultural overlays, it has the different types of maps, it has the drawing, everything that you're getting from the other apps, and that's on there. And that should be out by next week, the week after at the latest.
Oh, that's awesome. That's going to be a good tool.
Man.
Cool. Have we covered everything that you wanted to cover as far as like talking about Spartan Forge? Anything that you think we miss?
No, I mean, I guess the only thing I would say about Spartan Forge is, I interact with everyone on our Instagram. When people ask questions about the app, when they ask questions, a lot of people message me just about deer data. Like, hey, have you seen bucks do this? Have you seen this? Because a lot of my time is spent going through deer data. I interact with everyone on there. So if somebody has something about the app that's not working, or because, we're 9 months old, there are going to be phones. There are too many different types of phones to where I won't have every type of phone operating seamlessly before the first year is up. So if people have problems with the app, I can fix problems with the app. If they have questions or if they have ideas, people give me good ideas every once in a while. I'll throw them a lifetime membership for free. So if someone's like, hey, have you ever thought of this? And I'm like, wow, that's a great idea. I'll just go into our thing and make their app free for all time. And then, program and use the idea. So if anybody has questions or wants to reach out to me through there, through Spartan Forge, or they have recommendations, or they hate the app and they want their money back, like that's where I am, and you'll be dealing directly with me. And that's another thing that I plan on keeping in place no matter how large we get.
That's awesome. What about you could add like a connection between the app to like OnlyFans, so when you're bored on the stand, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, like download offline OnlyFans.
Yes. Yeah,
absolutely.
Lord. So all right, I just got a lifetime membership.
There you go. Jason, you had a lifetime membership before this call started.
Oh, all right. Oh, I'm ridiculous. Sorry.
It's hilarious.
Well, man, that was awesome. One thing that we always go through is a little rapid fire questions.
Oh, okay.
And I actually just got a text from your phone from Reagan asking, what are you going to be for Halloween?
Oh, Thor. I'll be Thor this year.
Okay.
I gotta put in some more time in the gym, but
hang on. Which Thor are we going to see here? Are we going to see Peak Adventures Thor? We're going to see Dad Bod Thor. There's a lot of options.
So I was Dad Bod Thor last year. I'll send you the picture later. I loved it because he looked like Lebowski, and one of my favorite movies is The Big Lebowski. So I was him last year. This year, I've been working on I had shoulder surgery last year and got into some really bad shape during COVID. Long sob story short, my mother died and a good friend had died in a short period of time. And I spent like 3 months in a bottle while I was still working on this app. I was, drinking whiskey all day and got out of military shape. So I've been spending the last about 5 or 6 months getting back into shape. So I think I'll do in shape Thor, peak Thor here for October 31st, if God willing. But we'll see.
Nice. I don't know what I'm gonna be for Halloween this year. I usually don't dress up. Well, I'm usually hunting on Halloween, so
My daughter's obsessed with Halloween, and I've got a whole theory behind that, maybe for your non-deer hunting podcast. But she's obsessed with like Halloween and zombies and vampires and stuff like that. And I think it's long story short because at a symbolic level, she sees that our society is turned into a parasite. We're a society that lives on the greatness of what used to be and taking from other people and giving to other people mandatorily. And I think kids see that, and then they see it in culture, which is why you see all of these like zombie movies and vampire movies getting popular and that type of stuff. So yeah, she's really into that. So she's going to obligate me to dress up this year for Halloween. So I think it will be peak Thor. We'll see though.
nice.
Well, I think you got to know when you certain times when you name your kids stuff, greatness is greatness comes with it.
Yeah. And her name is Reagan, in case anyone was wondering.
Right.
So, question number 2: who is your hunting role model? Like, whose pajamas do you wear? We've had that discussion.
Yes, we have had that discussion. So it would be like a hybrid of people, and it's funny because, well, I won't extrapolate on that anymore. I would say like Johnny Stewart and Andy May, both two guys who are on the pro staff, are guys that I think, from a strictly hunting perspective, I try to emulate, or I used to before I ran this company. I had a buddy tell me a few months ago, if you loved hunting, you should have never started a hunting application, because now you're never going to be able to hunt, because your busiest time of the year is, the hunting season. But when I was hunting, or, John Stewart is one of those guys who, it's interesting. It's interesting because both John and Andy fill this void, which I think is because they're just so busy hunting that they don't have the time to self-promote.
Right.
But they should be the go-to voices in the industry on hunting, especially John and Andy. Yeah, I mean, of course we've got guys like Garrett and the Seek One guys and Levi Morgan and all of those guys, and they all know their shit, and they all know how to deer hunt, and they all have their individual thing that they bring to the fight. But if the apocalypse happened tomorrow and I had to go into the deer woods and get food for my family, and I could bring someone with me, it would be probably either Johnny or Andy. Because John I don't know what it is. He is like the Rain Man of deer hunting.
Yeah.
And if people are smart to listen to him and to find out every podcast that he's on, and to he just, and the amount of time that he puts in, both of them. So I would say those are the guys who I try to emulate as a hunter most. And they're also not pretentious. They aren't self-aggrandizing. They're humble, and they're constantly always trying to learn. Like Johnny will sit in deer camp like he did in North Dakota, and he'll pick everyone's mind, like new hunter to the most experienced hunter in the cabin, and he'll spend time with all of them trying to like pick out little things, to add to his toolbox for the deer woods. And then you'll see him try them out or whatever, and he's just successful across. Doesn't matter where he's at. He's successful everywhere he goes. And and also, John and Andy both are crazy in that they killed their biggest deer in like January and February, and these off-season times that you don't expect people to be slaying the biggest deer in the woods is when they do it. So yeah, that's my answer to that question, I suppose.
Yeah, I think you made a pretty good selection. I had rapped with Johnny for about 30 minutes a day myself, and like really first time I've ever talked to him on the phone, and like it's just good hearing from dudes that are good hunters and share some of the same values as you do. And those are 2 great picks. That would be good ones to take into if you had to feed yourself strictly off deer, for sure. One last one. So you do a lot of public land hunting, you do some private land hunting, I believe, but like, what is your favorite setup? Are you a tree stand guy or a saddle guy or a hybrid guy?
I'm a tree stand guy, and I think I always will be. I mean, I have tried the saddle. I just didn't enjoy it. it might speak to me later because I keep telling people keep telling me I need to keep trying it. I've tried it twice, I think, and I was just okay with it. Like, I understand why people like it. Extra weight doesn't bother me. Like, so I'm already a big guy. Like, even when I'm at my fighting weight, I'm like 215 pounds. Like right now, I'm probably 240 pounds. And so when people are like trying to get as little weight as possible, like, it doesn't matter to me. The weight doesn't matter at super ton. I know it can for some people, and that's fine. And I don't shame anyone else's game. But for me, it's effectiveness. And for me, that setup is like right now I run like probably like the first generation Lone Wolf sticks and a really old, the old Lone Wolf climbers. I get made fun of every time somebody sees my setup. I just took the bottom part of the climber and I don't sit in the tree. I stand up. Yeah. So I don't like sitting. I feel like I get lazy or I'm more apt to get on my phone, which are two things that I try to stay away from in the deer woods. Is like once I get to my spot, I put the phone down and I'm not letting it distract me, because I've seen too many times where that buck was there for like 3 seconds. And if I was too busy, checking out my Spartan Forge OnlyFans, I might have missed that deer. And so I try to be aware and in the moment and not waste my time and be as present as possible in the deer woods. It's also how I decompress. So for me, that means standing up when I'm on stand. So I will have like my harness, I'll attach to the top of the tree. I'm standing the whole time. I never bring more than 3 sticks. So for me, it's that Lone Wolf bottom and then 3 sticks. And I'm, as I'm looking to upgrade. So I think I'm going to do an order for some sticks from you guys. The platform, I'm waiting for you to start selling it so I can get that too. Because the first time we met was that ATA.
Yeah.
And so that is that stand, I think, is the pinnacle of stands, and that definitely is what I will be waiting for. Until then, I'll keep running this Lone Wolf bottom. I don't, I've met the Lone Wolf guys a couple of times, and I don't mind saying I don't like any of them. But it doesn't. They don't know who I was, and they don't need to know who I was. I just knew how I was being treated in the moment. I didn't like it. So I would like to get off of those sooner than later. They are a quality product, though. I mean, I've ran that setup for 8 years or 9 years, and I've had no problems with it. And so I would rather take better gear by better people, which is why I'm trying to get your guys' stuff.
Yeah, we're going to be hooking it up. I'm waiting on some bolts to show up tomorrow so I can get you a set of sticks. It's funny you say that about your platform. When Tyler first came in the woods with me, I believe it was the first time we were in the woods, when he and Jordan came in to help me pack a buck out, and they saw my stand because I'd taken the seat off to save weight. And all I do is stand the same way. I'll stand all day. And only beauty I do like about, I personally use a saddle with my tree stand. And when I get tired, I just kind of set down in my saddle to take the pressure off my legs when I'm doing an all day sit.
I just thought about that today. When I was looking at my setup, I pulled it out of my rig. Some of my stuff was from North Dakota. And I actually thought about that because I saw your black belt and I thought that thing looked pretty sweet. I was like, that might be a better way of, I hate the straps. And I hate putting the straps onto the stuff on. And also, I have fallen out of a tree stand before. And that really hurts. Whenever you fall in one of those safety systems, it's not pleasant.
No.
No.
I had a stand break on me and I fell on one. And well, it didn't break. I should give context here. It was a permanent stand that I put up that was up forever, and it had like one of them seat belt harness or whatever you want to call it. And it had just gotten like dry rot, and I did not look because I was young and dumb. I think I was like 26 or 27 at the time or something. I just climbed up and was sitting in the tree and and then all of a sudden, bam, it broke and just came out from under me and fell down, and I was hanging from the tree, and it was painful.
Oh yeah.
And I was young and spry when that happened, so now I can't imagine what that would be like now.
Jason's left a part out about that. Like on the way in, me and Jordan were talking about saddle hunt, and like we liked it. And Jason's like, I don't know, being that guy.
I'll be a normal Jason, yes.
And then we get there and we see his stand, and Jordan's like, so what do you do? He's like, oh, well, I put on a rock climbing harness. And then when I feel like sometimes I face the tree and then sometimes I don't. But when I feel like I want to sit down, I just sit down and like leave. And I was like, so kind of like a saddle, huh? And he stopped and stared at us, and he goes, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I'm surprised he said, I guess.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I agree to disagree, but now there's benefits to saddle. I'm just one of those dudes that anything that's new and all hype, and it's the bandwagon. I want to be against it as much as possible in the beginning because I want to be an old curmudgeon. I am a curmudgeon. I'm working up to it. When I become an older guy, I want to be like that guy with Clint Eastwood. What was that movie called?
Gran Torino.
Gran Torino. I want to be like him when I get older. So I'm like building up myself to be that guy.
Yeah, I mean, I fancy myself the same way, but I also think about the amount of effort to integrate something into my current pack out, because I know where everything is in my bags. I know how my stand is. I know how everything gets set up. In fact, I can do it in the dark without a headlamp. I like being able to do all of that. Like I get down from the tree. I do the same thing every time. I will put my pack on. I took the shoulder straps off of an old rucksack of mine, a military rucksack. And I've got a device. I've got a thing that clips around my chest. So on the trees that I'm on, most times, I just clip it around the tree. I put my pack there. I pick up my stand. I pick up my climbers. I have parts that I've 3D printed that I can put in there. I put it all back together. I can do it in the dark. So when someone talks about new kit, I automatically am like, I don't want to have to relearn this perfect system that I have for everything. I like the system that I have. The system that I have works, and I have no reason to doubt it. So when I start thinking about a saddle like you're doing right now, I'm like, I'm going to have to learn how to do that the way I do it now and integrate it. And it's like, oh, what I have works. And so it's funny because I say all that and I'm developing the software app that's using artificial intelligence.
Yeah. I mean, same here. We develop new products and, I know I eat my own words sometimes, but it's just more for fun for me to be, like I said, an old curmudgeon.
I love it.
I think also innovation, it comes best from people with that mindset and that focus, that you're not trying to make a quick buck. You're not trying to, thump your chest and say, look at me and stroke that ego and make it bigger. You're trying to do something innovative to help people, like at the end of the day. And I think that changes how it goes. That's why Jason wears 5-inch inseam shorts.
Yeah, because they're efficient.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's what I have on right now.
Yeah. I've got on like 7-inch right now. It's a little long for me, but they're casual. They're going out to eat shorts.
In the military, we have what are called silkies, and I love wearing silkies.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
My kids hate it. I'll be in like 3-inch inseam silkies where you can see all the way up my legs. And my kids are like, that's what women should be wearing. And I'm like, you're an oppressive gender norm. You shouldn't be assigning these things to me. You guys are the progressive ones.
Don't put me in a box.
Yeah. I know, right?
Yeah.
You don't know my truth.
Yeah, exactly. Well, cool, man. It's been really awesome. I guess we could tease. We do have we're going to be doing like a joint relationship giveaway starting in October. We could tease on that if you want to, Bill. Is that all right?
Yeah, go for it. I mean, you're the man here. You tell them what's happening.
Yeah. So we're going to be doing a little promo with Spartan Forge. So for orders that are placed in October, through the month of October, over $500, they'll get a free year subscription to Spartan Forge app with those orders.
Absolutely. And that'll come with the web app and everything that we just talked about before. And Yep.
And we've got a bunch of cool swag that we're going to get from you and do some giveaways and stuff to kind of get the hype, because we want to help people that are good people and align with us and want to work with us. Because, I look at it when we make a partnership with somebody, it's not just for business. If somebody that doesn't like you comes up to you at a bar and wants to fight and any of us are there, it's going to be a bad day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So ride or die is how we roll.
Right. Exactly. That's the same way I look at it too. I want to align with people that I feel are in the industry for the right reasons and trying to do the right thing. And I want to elevate them among and above the rest of the turd burglars that are out there just trying to make a quick buck. There are too many of them.
Oh, there is. It happens. Well, great, man. So if anybody doesn't know you, know where to find you, where can people find more information about your products and yourself?
They can go on www.spartanforge.ai for artificial intelligence is our website. We put out, some pretty good articles. We just recorded a bunch of media while we were in North Dakota. Most of it is 18 and over, but we'll be putting that on. That's a joke. We'll be putting that on the website for people to, try to learn. One of the things with our kind of our ethos is deer hunting. That's derived, best practices derived from the military. So we're going to be putting up some stuff there on like how we do our pack outs in the military, how we arrange gear and weight stuff, how we sight in a rifle, and how you could use that for sighting in a bow. That type of content is going to be on there. Other articles about other types of hunting stuff, things about our pro staff and our products. Then, of course, they can go on Instagram and find us on there. And then I also have my own personal Instagram. When you interact with us, 20% of the time it'll be one of the marketing team. 80% of the time, or if you're asking a question about the app or about deer movement or something like that, you'll be interacting with me. And I feel like it's important for people to understand who is in charge of the ship at this company. And when they pay for the product, where that money is going and what it's going to, and the products and the things that we are building out into the future. I think these companies get away with becoming too abstract and just growing large and not offering anything new. And so we need to hold them accountable. And I feel like making sure that the CEO of the company is there and is subject to the problems that people have with the app or the things that they want to see in the app ensures that we don't run away into the sunset. Basically, we don't create a situation where we're just a bunch of douchebags that are out of touch with where we came from, which is my worst fear for this company, and that's something I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen.
I think that's a shared fear.
Yeah, I think it sounds familiar with how we interact with people, but we don't have a huge team. But I know I always feel I would be the one answering questions as long as I can and able to handle them. I mean, I have a strong belief in that. So
a lot of people will message to like partner or to get a free app for a giveaway or something, in which case you'll be hearing from the marketing team or from some of the people that are interacting on there. But if it's a deer question, an app question, or an error or a problem or a gripe, it's me.
Yep. Same. Well, cool, man. We really appreciate it. And we, like I said, again, we really value the partnership, we're looking forward to with you. And I guess that'll wrap it up for today. Everybody have a great day and a successful season and be safe. And we'll catch you next time. Oh, and make sure you go and hit that subscribe button wherever you listen to all your podcasts, please. Over and out.